Just about. Yep. And there we are. We're live. Hello and good afternoon. And you're very welcome along once again to How to Stay Sane in a Pandemic webcast. Delighted to have your company once more. And if you're watching this back later, you're also very welcome along. Again, I just want to thank everybody who's tuned in. This is our 5th episode. And I'm so thrilled with the number of people who've been watching these either live with us at the time or watching them back. If you have missed any, or if this is your first time joining us and you want to watch back on some of the other episodes, they are all now available on my website, which is barbarascully.com, and they're in chronological order. So last week I spoke with Bill Hughes. He'll be the first one you'll see, and then the other ones will come up after that. There will be a link under each one into the YouTube video, and you can watch it there. So that's on barbarascully.com. Next week will actually be my last webcast until after Christmas. I appreciate all the great feedback I've been getting. So I'm intending to be back on air in January. And what I would ask you is if you have any suggestions for people that you'd like me to invite on as my guest, fling them this way and let me know, because I haven't put anything together yet for the new year, but I will be obviously working on that very shortly. So do let me know. Anyway, talking of guests, as you can see, I have my latest guest ready to join us. Rebecca Horan is a journalist and broadcaster. She's head of video and DMG Media, and she's radio presenter on Radio Nova, and she has her glass of red wine like that good woman that she is, ready to go. Hi, Rebecca, and thanks a million for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I've been watching this with great interest and loving it. So I was quite honoured, Barbara, to be asked to do it. And yes, I've got wine because I'm working.
Good woman.
So I'm on the wine early.
Good. Well, I'm being a bit of an old woman, as is appropriate today. I'm actually on the Baileys because I slightly overdid the white wine last night, and it was a bit headachy all day. So I thought I'll have a little Baileys, which means I won't overdo it today. But yeah, cheers. Very important to have a drink at this hour of the day when the sun has completely left us. Speaking of which, we can see at the window there a little bit behind you the mountains. You, Rebecca, have recently moved from the big smoke. You were in Ranelagh or Rathgar or somewhere, and you've now moved down to the wilds of Wicklow. So first of all, how is that working out for you?
You're right. I was in a city, a very little, gorgeous city house, but it was little, in Rathgar for years. Very lucky to be in such a nice place, but it was tight. And I would never have seen myself leave. I loved roaming the streets of Dublin, being able to walk and cycle to work. I loved going in and out of galleries, and I loved the culture. I loved going to a pub. I loved everything being, accessible and near in the proximity. And COVID hit, and I never in a million of years would have thought that we would have ended up moving. But I think everything got too tight. Working from home suddenly became a new reality. We also had our own personal things we wanted to work through, and I thought, where better than the space of Wicklow? And it was a fluke. We came out to have a look at a house, and it was the house we picked. It was the house we bet on. And we worked very hard to get in, and we're in. But I'm actually from Wicklow originally. So as much as I act like some city slicker, I was from Wicklow and grew up there for 17 years. So in Blessington. So I love Wicklow. So delighted to be here.
You're back in the bosom of your home county, really. Yeah. That's interesting that COVID brought around that change of where you wanted to live,
Yeah, it really, and not to get too philosophical about COVID, because obviously everyone has been damaged or hurt or also enlightened in different ways this year from COVID. I think it's done the world of good for some people, besides the sadness that it's brought and obviously a huge loss. It really changed our perspective of what we actually really valued and needed. And I think also at our age, this kind of needing to be near social, kind of outlets. Like, to be fair, we have a toddler. How often are we going out clubbing or to various gigs? But also that need for space. And I'm a real believer in having a good old walk, having space to work quietly, especially in our business where you need that. And yeah. I craved that more, and we weren't going to get that affordably in Dublin. So that was the kind of core. So I'm absolutely thrilled.
Lovely, lovely. Well, look, the best of luck to you. You're doing something that I would love to do eventually. I keep having dreams of a country life, but it would also involve maybe a donkey and a goat and maybe a sheep and a cow. I don't think you have that in Wicklow, do you, at the minute?
I would love that. I'd never have that because we wouldn't have the acres, but I would actually love to live on a farm or have all of that. Now, a dog would be the first port of call, but no, like, it sounds really twee, and I don't want to be too kind of tripe about it all, but it's very much the dream. And I think it has been, but I think it pretended I needed to be near. Maybe I'm not as sociable as I thought I was, so we're delighted, yeah.
That's what happens as you get older, that they're the kind of things you value. Anyway, let's crack on. I know you're a reader because in a previous life, we used to very often meet up in the studios of East Coast Radio in Bray. And I know I was only when I was thinking about you coming on, I was thinking, I know we used to do the news panel regularly, but we also used to do book reviews, which I remember. And so I know you're a reader. So actually, God, it's just coming back to me now. I think the last book review we did, you had Caroline Flack's book.
Yes.
And of course, Caroline Flack is no longer with us. I remember you were a big fan of hers.
I was. Such a strange one because I can be a bit of a snob about what I read and digest and take in. And I would never have, sorry, I wasn't some big, huge fan of her television work. It wasn't exactly something I watched there was something about her. I don't know whether it was her vulnerability. And as a woman, I probably am one of those heart in your sleeve, vulnerable, yet very kind of extrovert women. And something always connected. I'd see her on TV and I go, God, I like her. Now, she was Marmite. I know lots didn't. And I read her book because it was given to me, actually. I think we were given books, which I loved because we could take them home and keep them. And I was so happy. And I read her book, which was, I think, something Life in a Sea Cup. It was about her boobs. I can't remember. And it was so good. It was really about this kind of very ordinary working class family and how she'd gone to dance school in London and made it. But the trials and tribulations, the knocks, but also the depression, which really wouldn't go later. So yeah, you're correct. I actually have to say it was very sad when she passed away.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was terribly sad. Anyway, what are you reading? Do you find you're reading more during this period of lockdown and restricted life than you would normally read?
So obviously, you know, I work in media. I'm consumed by it. I work for a publisher. It's fantastic, but it was a lot. I felt the COVID information was a lot. And I stopped watching terrestrial, like day-to-day TV, because I felt like that was just not for me. It was kind of bringing me down a bit of a dark hole. So I got my news stuff every day and then stepped away. And I wasn't crazy about Netflix either. So I was reading books. But Barbara, I was actually going back, and I've got books here. I was going back to my old, I felt very nostalgic during COVID. I needed to have some positive outlet. And I felt like all the books I read when I used to travel, when I met my husband, when I was young, were the books I wanted to read. So I went back to David Eggers, David Sedaris. I went back to people that were kind of like quirky American LA kind of thriller books that really I loved. I went back to obviously one of the old beauties, Jack Kerouac, On the Road.
Wow.
Which I love.
I have heard so much about that book, and I have never so much as picked it up, and I don't even know what it's about. Give us a very brief kind of overview.
It's about a journey of a chap. It's people think it's kind of this snobbish intellectual, like artsy fartsy book, but it's not. It's about a journey a chap makes across America and all of the ins and outs that happen along the way on the road. And it's absolutely gorgeously written. I think it's kind of a follow-on from an Ernest Hemingway type style of writing. So if you're into that kind of quick-witted writing, and it's beautiful. And it's dark in places, and I just loved it when I was young. I was probably a bit pretentious, so I was probably trying to impress the boyfriend. But now I actually really enjoyed it more because I read it for my own. Things like Colin Hayes from Radio Nova gave me Daisy Jones.
I read that earlier this year. I loved it.
I did. I liked it. Now you know, when someone raves about something, you want to love it too. I did like it, but his other book that he gave me, Fleischman is in Trouble, I preferred. Now this is brilliant.
I haven't heard of that one.
And it's about quite a tricky man and his tricky relationship with his wife and all the entanglements thereafter. But it's good. Now this is beefy. I would prefer this. I read. I started this and never finished it. Samantha Power's The Education. I think I got it from my mum and it was passed on. Yeah, it's good. I think you have to have a bit of time and love for that. I really didn't. City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert is brilliant.
Elizabeth Gilbert, she's. I think I've read her before, but I can't think of what.
Eat, Pray, Love, which is horrendous, right? Not my.
Oh God, yeah.
This is fantastic, right?
Right.
It's not the same as Eat, Pray, Love. It's not about her. It's actually fictional. It's about these women in New York in the 40s, and it's very nice. And I was going to read Women Who Run with Wolves because my mum had recommended it, but I ran and read Untamed by Glennon Doyle, which saved my soul, and I can wholeheartedly say she would save my soul, right? If you don't follow Glennon Doyle on Instagram, do, for her nuggets. She is gas, she is honest, she is cynical, she's witty, she's been great with the whole Joe Biden thing, but she is off a rocker. Now, this is a book that everyone had recommended, and it really is about how to change your way of thinking. Now, it's not some psych blabble, The Secret. It's really just about the little things that will change your way of how you please people or how you behave around people to make your life a little bit easier. And it's very good.
Excellent, because I dipped in and out of it. I to be honest, I have it, and I go back to it every so often. The Women Who Run with the Wolves, and lots of it resonates with me, and then other parts of it I don't understand. It's like that kind of out there, but it's one of those interesting books that I would dip in and out of occasionally, and to go back to the Daisy Jones and the Six. Which is about a rock band and a girl who said, I think, am I right? Because it was months ago that I read that. It was probably nearly a year ago that people felt it was loosely kind of based around Fleetwood Mac.
Yes. And I think copied from Almost Famous a little bit as well. There was a few comparisons made about it. But yes, I think there was a bit of a road.
Yeah.
I think it is good. I think it's a bit of crap. I think it's
an easy read.
It is an easy read. And it's a bit like my mum has just given me Homestretch by Graham Norton, which I was like, oh, why would I enjoy it? And she's like, no, you will like it. And Dolly Alderton's Ghost, it's another easy read. Okay, so
right.
It's consumable when we're finally let out on holiday or at Christmas maybe. But if you want a juicy book, Samantha Powers is probably fab. And Rafa, this is such a random, don't even slag me, Barbara. I'm a big fan of Rafa Nadal, right? But I'm not some sports biopic. I wouldn't bother. This was just in our bookshelf because I presume my husband bought it. This is a great read. This is a really weird one, but it's fantastic because his life, his kind of growing up in Majorca, which is a small island, his, rise to fame, the crap in between. It's a really cool book. Honest to God, it wouldn't be some avid, but anyway.
Sorry. Rafa, who he again?
Rafa Nadal, the tennis player.
Tennis player. Thank you. Sorry, I was thinking footballer for some reason. I've heard of Rafa Nadal. Yeah, I wouldn't be.
Yeah. Anyway,
I was thinking footballer, and I was like, who he? Oh, right, Rafa Nadal. Yeah, I'm with you.
So I got through quite a lot. I got through quite a lot to keep the head at night because our toddler has never slept and we were working hard. So opening the book and getting into it was actually great.
Great.
I felt like I didn't have the concentration for Netflix, or I hadn't the inclination. So books have always been, look, like you, I love the book.
I'm going to throw in one of my own because I mentioned this last week, but because I was only halfway through it last week and I was enjoying it very much. But sometimes, the way a book can fall off the cliff kind of towards the end, and then I wouldn't be recommending it. But again, easy read. This one, Away with the Penguins by Hazel Pryor. If you liked what's her name, Eleanor Oliphant, or The Rosie Project, or those kind of slightly quirky books that are very much character driven rather than plot driven, that are about interesting characters. This is a gorgeous, easy fall in to take you away, takes you to Antarctica, penguins. It completely removes you from COVID and all the kind of nonsense that we're in at the moment, and so it's just great. And I'm currently reading, which I may talk about next week, but I think you'd enjoy this too. I think you'd like this. Beautiful. I've always thought I'm a big fan of his as an actor, and I've always thought he's a very thoughtful, kind of philosophical kind of guy. But he writes like a poet. He's a beautiful writer, and it's kind of memoir, but it's not. It's kind of dips into his current life as a film actor and his early life growing up in Dublin, and I'm loving it. I'm eating it up. I'll have it done in another few hours. It's great. So you've said you don't really watch TV and you don't watch Netflix very much. So talk to me about. Do you listen to stuff? Do you listen to podcasts, or if you're driving, what are you doing? Are you listening to the radio, or are you listening to podcasts, or are you listening to music? What's your kind of take me out of myself?
No, now with us commuting and we're driving, I'm a music gal.
Okay.
So it would be, obviously work for Radio Nova, do the odd gig, love them, would listen to that kind of music. Would actually East Coast fantastic now that I'm out this way. Great music. For talk radio, love it. Get your bit from that, which I really enjoy. but I wouldn't listen to a podcast in the car. I would listen to music, right? When I say I don't watch Netflix, anything that people are raving about, of course I'll go to and have a look at. But I don't have this obsessive keeping up with the Joneses. Have you seen The Undoing? Have you seen? I don't do that. So I go in, I'm always late to the party on Netflix. But I will, and I enjoyed, there was a few really wonderful thrillers on Netflix. I love a good real life crime, which is horrendous. I know it's really gruesome, but I prefer that.
Can I just stop you there? I don't know if you because if you do like true crime, which I generally don't, but there's a series at the moment on RT, and I think it might be on tonight, called, oh God, I should have looked it up. It's something like the crime the murder I can't forget, or something like that. And it's basically, there was only one episode so far, which I saw last week. I think it might be on tonight. And it's basically stories of murders told from the perspective of the investigating Gardaí. So it's usually like, the guard who was in charge of the investigation, and how they did it, and how it affected them, and the story of the actual crime of the murder itself. And I stumbled upon it last week, but I thought it was really, really good. And actually, the guard involved last week was a right character, very articulate, and he was actually quite funny, although the subject matter wasn't funny. But I think, it's probably on the RT player, and it should be worth having a watch back if you're interested in true crime.
Well, I think it's a funny one. My husband's always like, "Why didn't you do forensics, or why weren't you?" And I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "Because you're fascinated. Like, the killing was always," and I love those kind of dark, North Scandinavian kind of ones where they're in a wood, or it's mental stuff. But like, I watched all the rubbish. I watched The Selling Sunsets. Do you know what I loved? I loved the morning show on Apple TV with Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon. Loved that.
Haven't seen that, yeah.
Fantastic. You can just get it and you just eat it in 6. You don't even have to watch it over a few nights. I actually, Barbara, went back to kind of movies of my youth. Again, like this nostalgia thing kept playing up. What makes me happy? What did I really love? We're in a rush. We don't know when we're getting out of it. So what's going to uplift me? So John Cusack movies, High Fidelity. I watched Pretty in Pink, Breakfast Club. I went back to the stuff that brought me joy in probably college and teen years. And I really ate those up, those old films. It's really funny, and I'm not some poetry gal. I would always feel a little bit cynical about poetry. I would definitely have dipped in and out of poetry book for a few little words of wisdom throughout this. And Oprah Winfrey, What I Thought I Knew, or What I Think I Knew, or What I Knew, whatever she's on about is lovely too, for the toilet maybe.
Is that a book, or is that...
Yes, it's a book. I have it downstairs. What I Wish I'd Known, or What I Knew Before. And it's basically life lessons from Oprah, which of course we all bloody need. But it's kind of gas. Each page is a new story about how this challenge happened to me when I was a kid, but this is how I should have come through it mentally. It's very good. It's again a bit of a Glennon Doyle. It's probably a bit of a life lessons book. Love podcasts. Was listening to a lot of female driven podcasts throughout. I was on Georgie Crawford's podcast, The Good Glow, which is a great one. I love that. And I dip in and out. The problem with podcasts is concentration wise, if it's over 50 minutes or an hour, I never get to go back because I have a little one. So I think I like those little bite-sized pieces of
Yeah. I'm just going to mention one podcast as well that I discovered this week, which again, I thoroughly enjoyed. And it is called the Better Known podcast. And it's done by a guy called Ivan Wise. It's an English podcast where he talks to a different guest every week about 6 things they wish were better known, or they think should be better known. And they can be anything. So it can be like a book, or it can be music, or it can be a place, or it can just be a story or a piece of history or whatever. But he's had a very eclectic set of guests. And actually, last week or the week before, he interviewed Eleanor Fitzsimons. I don't know if you know Eleanor. She's a writer. A lot of people on Twitter would know her. Eleanor has written 2 great books, one about Oscar Wilde's women, and the other one, the biography of E. Nesbitt. But she was interviewed, and she was really interesting, had very quirky and interesting 6 things that should be better known. So that's, I think, you can listen to it wherever you get your podcasts, but there is a betterknown.co.uk and all of the past episodes there. So if somebody's looking for a podcast, an interesting kind of quirky podcast, that one is one that I would definitely recommend. Anyway, What other things have you found during this whole kind of mad period? And I know you've had a big house move in the middle of it, which may have knocked some of this off course. But are there habits that you have developed or things that you're doing now that perhaps you wouldn't have been doing a year ago that you see as a positive or something that you're going to continue on doing?
Well, I
Like
mean,
whether it's baking bread or I don't know.
no, no,
No.
no cooking or baking was involved in the making of this pandemic because I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not ever. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely shocking when it comes to anything culinary. And I actually was saying to my mum last night, I rang her, I was on a walk and I got really upset. I was like, why do people like cooking and baking? And she was like, Jesus, because my mum is incredible at cooking. And she'll just throw something together and I get really annoyed because it's so fantastic. And I said I burned all of my top fingers last night in my hand in the oven trying to bring out a thing I was making. And I said to her, I don't enjoy it. I don't find it therapeutic. So I didn't do the stupid sourdough. Sorry, not stupid.
Banana bread.
Banana bread. I didn't get on that bandwagon. I tell you what I did. I reassessed a lot. So I did a lot of deep thinking about, is this house and this city making us happy, or are we doing it because we think this makes us happy and therefore the move? I've always been a firm believer of exercise. And I'm not talking about killing yourself on a spin bike. I'm talking about actually physically getting out and moving. And I walked for miles every day when I could, when she was asleep and when work was finished. And I wasn't necessarily listening to something because it's better when I'm not. And I got out.
Yeah.
I pound the streets more so than running or jogging. Walking for me has always been therapeutic.
Yeah.
I used to be this massive gin bunny when I really cared about how I looked. It was a vanity project, definitely. And I was obsessed with it. And this was not about damaging or harming or making myself more beautiful. This was genuinely for the head. And I loved doing that. And I'd walk through the city, which was quiet, obviously, and all around the neighbourhoods in Dublin 6. And I really loved that. Having the odd, I'm not a drinker. I've always been not a great drinker. I was never a big boozer. I would actually really go for a gin and tonic in the evening as a kind of settler. And I really enjoyed it because I don't drink a lot. So when I did, it was lovely. I found I was Zooming all day, so I'd be quite allergic to keeping contact. So I found my contact with my friends grew sparse because I didn't want to be on FaceTime and Zoom all day.
Yeah, yeah, I get that.
So I probably only kept in touch with them through WhatsApp and Instagram, which is a terrible thing to admit. But I came even closer to my husband and toddler. And what I now realised is that I've always wanted to be a mum, always, and always said I never want to get married and have kids as a kind of rebellion, right? And have happened to have an okay career, right? I've happened to fall into the right places and I work hard and I've done okay. But it's funny, I then thought about it. I was like, all I really wanted was to be a good mom. So I've really have a lot of regrets about putting her into creche at 5 months, about working hard when I was breastfeeding full time and pumping, going home, putting all these things ahead of her. And so what I'm really pouring my heart into, if I'm really honest, Barbara, is just reattaching, reconnecting, and spending more time with her and my husband, and just loving that actually, and not being so apologetic and guilty, because as women, I personally think still there's huge guilt with working women and their family, and something always gives, like something, I'm guilty when I'm in work and I'm guilty when I'm at home, and I've just kind of gotten rid of that. So I'm really honest, very simple stuff, big walks, fun time with her, managing how to understand her better through tantrums, and like what is actually wrong, what does she actually need? Oh, usually just a hug. And that simple stuff, honest to God. And I've stayed hugely in touch with my parents who are at the other side of Wicklow, and just kept, and every night it was nice to speak to them because it's a lonely time. So really, I ate a lot of crap.
Yeah, I drank a bit of wine. Yeah, that's good. And of course, now you've got all of, having pounded the streets around where you were living before, you've now got all of Wicklow on your doorstep to explore, because I think many people have found, I mean, I still live in the area that I more or less grew up in, but I have found places I never knew existed literally within my 5 kilometers here during this lockdown, by just purely, kind of desperation of trying to find somewhere new to explore, and discover laneways and byways that I never knew existed before. Anyway, you mentioned your husband there earlier, and I know your husband is South African. So obviously there's the whole kind of, that part of your family is locked away from you for the moment. So how, I mean, that is difficult, and it must be difficult for him to kind of come to terms with as well.
Yeah, he's very emotionally mature. I'm a very emotional person, again, like I think you've discovered. And I'm a heart. He's very emotional. He's a very practical man. And by the way, I just want to quickly say, You're pounding the streets and finding new places. You're such an inspiration. Like genuinely, you touch everyone when you go on about when you talk about your diabetes story, which I know you've done, and just the cycling and the
Thank you.
activity and the positivity is incredible. I just want to scream from the rooftops that it's been so wonderful to see. And can we please have more
Oh,
of that
thank you.
in our life? Yeah, he's just a very practical man. He's like, it sucks. We're in lockdown. Yeah, it sucks. I'm just like, oh my God. And
Drama llama.
it's like, this is horrendous. And they were in a very severe lockdown in South Africa where it's quite conservative. There was no alcohol, cigarettes to be allowed, but curfews were brought in, which we thankfully didn't have. They'd be locked in the house. They were living in a remote part of South Africa. And I think the loneliness was very hard. Now, he was constantly in touch, but he was practical. He was like, we haven't seen them. It's going to be nearly 2 years before we get out of this. But the good news is they decided they're going to move to Ireland through all of this. So they're coming in January.
No way.
Yes,
Oh
so
my God, that's amazing.
They also made a massive life change. And I think in June, after she hadn't seen Gia, our little one, in a year and a half and hadn't met her new grandchild either, her on the other side, I think she kind of, the mom, Jason's mom, Bridget, just went, I can't do this anymore. And as much as we love South Africa, it's in our hearts. Where do we actually want to spend the rest of our life to be with? And they've lost a lot of time, you know. So they're moving here in January. So they're going to be down in Bray. So for goodness sake, I can bitch about my in-laws next year. I'll have a new project.
That's fantastic. Oh my God. Maybe Sherwood and I will end up going to Australia. I know my other two daughters are all on for that. They're all saying we should all move to Australia and all settle in Australia where the sun shines all the time.
All I know is life is not clear cut, and life is not necessarily what you think it's going to be. I always thought I'm going to be a South Dublin woman who maybe works in it, you know. I'm not that. I've decided I love the country. I love the simpler things in life. I don't maybe love the glam. I mean, I've put on a bit of slap for you, which you saw me doing, but I think if I pare it back, I actually love being on my own quite a lot of the time. I quite like my own company as much as I love my job, and I love the focus of work. It's very good for me.
Yeah.
But nothing is set in stone, Barbara. Nothing is. If you want to do something in life, for God's sake, do it. And I think they're nearly 70 and they're doing that. And that's
yeah. I think that's just marvelous, and I think that's a really important point that you made. That life very often isn't what you thought it was going to be, or you weren't even not what you thought you were. And I think, but to discover that is really important, and to discover what it is that makes you happy, even if it seems counterintuitive, is really important. So, I mean, that's great.
The other day, I was commenting on someone I thought I knew. I said, that's funny. And Dad goes, but we never, and my dad is very, really well read and philosophical, he's gas, but he goes, we don't even know ourselves, Rebecca. And I said, that's stupid. And he goes, but we never really know ourselves or each other. And I think we're only discovering. Like, I would have thought I'd have maybe 3 babies by now, be married, living in some, estate in Dublin, and maybe doing this.
Yeah.
Who the fuck knows what's going to happen to us? Maybe we'll end up back in South Africa someday.
Yeah.
But I know that's the exciting thing about life. All of the troughs are hard, and this darkness has been hard, but it always gets better. So.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And come here, last question then. You've mentioned your lovely daughter, who I know is 3. So are you all set for like Santa? Are you doing the old elf on the shelf? Is you involved in all of that kind of stuff, or?
I'm allergic to elf on the shelf. Fair play to you if you have the energy or wherewithal. I couldn't be arsed. We have a advent calendar with her, which actually just causes more drama every morning because she screams for all the rest of them to be opened with the tiny chocolates. So we do that. I absolutely love Christmas. I'm not saying it ever works out the way I want it to. Often there's drama with the family. But I don't know why in me, I think like a film, it's always going to be amazing. And I love it. So not in the materialistic, I'm going to buy loads of crap, right?
Yeah.
I just love that feeling of slowing down, the festive, the lights. I love the drink, the food. So I eat it up. And my husband is the absolute opposite. He has a barbecue and they go to church Christmas Day, so he can't bear it, right? So I got her a few gifts from Santa Man, but she doesn't really know yet, to be fair. She's not that arsed. So she wants ice cream. She'll get ice cream. I want to have a sleep in. That's it. But I actually just can't wait to be with Mum and Dad, and hoping to God that if I quarantine, I can give my mum a hug, which would be brilliant.
Yeah, please God, it'll certainly be, I think for a lot of people, for most people, quite a different Christmas this year. But sure, as we always say, sure, we'll get over it. I always love that Dublin saying, how did you get over Christmas? I always think it's something sometimes to be gotten over. And we'll all get over it. And hopefully then next year we'll be looking at things improving by the month, rather than this backwards and forwards thing we've been doing for the last 9 months. Anyway, we have our half an hour is up. Rebecca, thank you so much. I wish you the best of luck down there in the Garden of Ireland. A beautiful place to live. And I wish you every happiness in your new house, continued success in all that you do, because you're great and you're a great beacon of positivity and hope and light. So keep doing what you're doing. You're wonderful, and have a great Christmas, and then an exciting January with your in-laws all arriving. Lots going on.
I love this. I'm going to keep watching and listening. And thanks for making something like this, because we blooming well need it. So happy Christmas, Barbara.
And you too. And listen, thank you everybody who's joined us. It was lovely to have your company. And I'll be here again, as I say, for the last one before Christmas next Wednesday at 4:15. I have another amazing woman for you to enjoy. I'll tell you more about that early next week. But in the meantime, take care, mind yourself, wash your hands, and stay safe. Whoops.